Hi, hello everyone, and welcome to Spiritual Connections with Jen, where I'm both honoured and delighted to have Jean Decode here as my first guest. Jean is a 20 plus year veteran of the US Navy submarine fleet. He is a 40-year plus martial arts instructor, sensei, as well as a lifelong student and practitioner of naturopathic medicine. So, welcome, Jean. I'd
Thank
love
you.
Yeah, I'd love for you to give our listeners a little bit more background about how you came to be doing what you're doing now and about Blessed for Service.
Yes, absolutely. Kind of fell into it. I've learned don't ask God for something unless you're sure you want it. As I said, I woke up to all of this deep state satanic stuff in 1990, and I researched it. I didn't want it to be true. It was so, what I realized and I researched was so evil and bad and deep and horrific and deadly. And there's no way out. And we're done and we're going to be in camps and that's it. And, you know, we're never going to get out. And they were infiltrated into every organization on earth, over 30 people. I was like, we're done. No. And now that they're coming down, it's like, wow, I never thought that would be possible. But, to see the cracks of light coming through, and if you knew, all of what people know, and if they're really following what Trump's doing, not just what the mainstream media is putting out or even in the social media, if they're doing their research, they would be floored. The best place I can think of for people to really understand this is to go to Stop World Control Now by David Sorensen. He's really a wonderful Christian man, and he really puts it in focus. It's amazing what is happening. And so when I first woke up to this in 1990, I thought, we're done. That's it. So I tried to wake people up, and that was impossible. People just, most people just roll your eyes. You're out of your mind because they're so controlled by the mainstream media. They didn't believe anything. They just believe what the mainstream media told them. And it's like, you can't, even when I was studying naturopathic medicine, this is only like 15 years or so ago, I was finishing doing that. And the school I was going to, the Chinese lady, even she said, if that were true, somebody would have said something. Some people have, and they're dead. Like Kennedy himself. No, that was a lone gunman. No, it wasn't. Well, then how come nobody else knows that? Other people do. You're just not researching. A lot of people don't believe acupuncture works either. So, it's all about control of what people believe. If you would get out of a box and just look at a few things, there's tons of books I could give you to read. And she's like, I just can't believe it. That's what I get. I just can't believe that. There's no way. Or the other end of it, once in a while, I get somebody who knew it already. That was about 1 in 10,000. Or the other end of the spectrum is 1 in 1,000 people would learn everything and say, I don't want to know anymore. Now, I'm just going to try to live my life while there's some time left. I understand that one too, because I felt, the same way. Although I was, very quickly upon learning this, the lady that I had been was going to marry decided she didn't like me anymore. She said she loved me because I was so different. And she said, you're too different. I don't even like you anymore. You can't not talk about this. I said, I can. She goes, but I'll know you're thinking about it. That's not fair. She goes, I don't care. So I wound up on my own for quite a few years. And I was wanting to help wake up people to the truth of what's going on so we can do something about it, get the people waking up. And I asked God, please bring me somehow, after decades somehow. And sure enough, he brought it. I'm like, oh my goodness, the whole world is out there, is like seeming to know me. It's like a lot of the majority of at least those people online in this, social media and all these podcasters and stuff like that. So it's like, it's a little bizarre for me. Not a little, it's really bizarre for me to have people, just know of my, I've had people that knew me from back in my military service contact me through my email that I give out. And they said, I know it's you. And because my voice, I guess, was very recognizable and unique. And I said, yeah, it's me. And they said, yeah, I knew it. You're saying the same stuff you were saying, but you've got a long way since you have a lot more information. I go, well, you grow, you keep researching, you learn, you know.
Mm.
So that's a big part of, you know, how I came and fell into it. Also due to my martial arts, kind of being growing up in a different, even though I'm an American and I grew up in America, mainland, mid part of the US, I kind of raised myself. My parents were working so much and hardly ever there. And my sister was the one that changed my diapers and gave me my formula and stuff until I could, you know, go to the refrigerator myself and take care of myself. And after that, I pretty much, you know, took myself, walked myself to school back and forth. Didn't pay attention much in school because it seemed stupid and wrong. You know, like from the get go, I'm like, this makes a lot of stuff they're teaching doesn't make any sense at all. And I'd figure out things for myself. And so just grew up different, you know. And then, of course, my father was a high end level engineer for Martin Marietta. So I was walking through the living room with sparks flying around like Tesla. And that gave me a different point of view on things. And, you know, I would talk to people about that and they just, like even before the red bill, so to speak, they didn't have that term in 1990, but even before in like elementary school, high school, people would be talking about, you know, we're going to the moon again. They go, what do you mean again? Well, we've been there a long time. It's like, what? That thing? That's going to the moon? I don't think so. They go, I go, that's not going to get there. They go, why not? It looks like tinfoil. That's why, you know, it's like, so a lot of things, you know, I know we went there, just not exactly how they're showing you, you know, and what's on there, what all of this stuff. And then, you know, my martial arts is the other thing that absolutely changed me because I didn't do dojo martial arts. I did special forces. And after classes, you know, being taught, my instructor was the lead SEAL on Earth. He ran the SARS school and he did 12 drops behind the lines of Vietnam. And he would talk about things that were just, for anybody else, they'd be going, you're out of your mind. But, you know, for me, I was like, oh, okay. So he, like one time said, he doesn't eat garlic and you, because what it does to your brain, it decentralizes the right and left hemispheres. And so you can't do 3D coordination very well with that. And he said, we did use it to code our bullets. And no, I go, for werewolves or vampires or what? And he goes, well, that too. But, you know, I'm like, oh, okay. You know, because by that time I had already experienced those things. You know? So, you know, there's so many things that are kind of outside the box compared to most people that grew up in the US. But when you travel the world, like I did, you know, they say join the Navy, see the world, you do. And then since I retired, I saw a lot more with my wife. We traveled all over the world. And I love talking to people, meeting people and learning about their culture and not staying on the ship or taking tours with the rest of the crew, you know, on a bus. I get out and I go on my own with one or two good friends on the ship and just meet people and talk and, you know, get the best restaurants and the best places to see and nobody else knows because you're not asking people. And so you learn so much and you see so much. You see things like in India, there's temples where you have a stegosaurus carved into the temple that's supposed to be a few thousand years old. And the stegosaurus is supposed to have got extinct millions plus hundreds of millions of years ago. I'm like, either that's not true or that temple's not that age. So there's something wrong with this is what I found in school too. I go, something wrong with what you're saying, you know, and I have this, you know, I've seen Brachiosaurus footprints with human footprints side by side in sandstone. So I'm like, you know, I spent a lot of time in the principal's office. I saw that at 8 years old. My father took me up to a place and I saw tracks like that. I go, I thought you said humans weren't around with dinosaurs. He goes, I don't know how to explain that. I go, yeah, because they were together. So either the dinosaur was here not that long ago or we were here a long time ago. There's only two conclusions, right? So because of those kind of things, I was sent to the principal's office, and I had my own little locker, and I just read and study in there, about once every 2 or 3 times a day. Again, we finally just would point at the chair, and I just go pull out my own books that I studied from. So it just made me a bit different. And I think that's why I woke up in the 90 time frame when most people weren't. Now, I see, I go to a park and I hear people walking by talking about these kind of things, and it's kind of common knowledge about closing in on half of people are pretty much awake now. And then also due to my martial arts, I did have an incident where I died for half an hour because of putting a sword into my knee through a situation that came up. So in that, I talked to God for 30 minutes corporeal time, but I wasn't in my body. So I was talking directly to God while zooming through the universe, and I was like, what the heck? We go, what happened? Because I was looking down on the earth suddenly. I'm like, what happened? You died? And it was so weird because the voice, like they said, God is within you. The voice was inside me. I was like, I'm confused. He goes, there is no outside. It's all inside you, everything. Then how can I be going through the universe? I'm inside. That's inside me. He goes, you'll get it one day. But that's not important right now. What is important is, do you have questions about, you need to know certain things because you're in ascension. I'm in what? Ascension. What's that? So he told me all this, and eventually it got to the point where I said, I realized there were things I hadn't done, and I wouldn't be corporeal again, and that I wanted to do especially one thing. So he gave me the offer to come back, which with a huge cost if I messed up when I was back here, but I said yes. So we came to that agreement, and here I am. So that's very shortly, in his terms, I was back, and then things changed, and I became Gene Decode and all that. So that's basically who I am.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that, Jean. I've made a few more little notes there. And yeah, I can resonate with masses of what you've said. So let me first just say a little bit about myself for the listeners as well. So I'm Jenny from Positone Changing Perceptions. I'm a spiritual coach, a facilitator of energy healing, retired swimming teacher, and a self-published author. And whilst I've got these paper qualifications, etc., my experience mainly comes from all the challenging life happenings, of which there are many. So within my work and life, I do my best to always see the bigger picture. And so I guess in a way, um, I've always known I've been awake, but yet not gone with it, uh, sort of understood it properly. So what I'm hoping for today is and we've already started with what you've said, it's brilliant, that we have this deep and profound spiritual chat. So that because I love to help the listeners to gain more understanding of spirituality on a deeper level. In 2000, I really began in earnest to work on myself. And I used various healing modalities. I did have a disability at one point that I was told I was disabled, 20% disabled for life, and I healed from that. Um, and that took me further in and deeper into my own healing journey, which obviously I'm still on. But one hard thing for me to grasp was how it was to put myself first in every situation so as not to deplete and exhaust my own energy to the point of burnout, which I've actually done, I think, 2 or 3 times in the past. And I'm really not going there anymore. But I fully began to understand the importance of this in May 2016. I wanted to go home. This is how it felt for me. I wanted to go home. I felt really calm, really at peace. I felt that I'd helped everybody the best that I could, to the best of my ability, and that it was just my time to be at peace. 8 hours later, I wake, and sort of from then on, I was able to understand it was like that was the point where I sort of pulled back from helping others first and foremost before myself. And it's a what's that, 9 years ago. So, and I'm still doing it. There are still times where I actually, and there are certain times obviously where you do have to put somebody else first if it's an emergency or whatever. However, um, what came out of that was that because I ended up having to see this psychiatrist, right, for an hour. And so I told him all about this, about spirituality and stuff. Oh no, I told him about stuff, and he says, I don't know anything about spirituality. Bearing in mind, this is only 9 years ago, and a psychiatrist doesn't know anything about spirituality. So I explained and everything. So at the end of this hour, he said to me, so how do you feel now? I said, well, I feel exactly the same as I did. However, I know that I'm here now to help educate others in about spirituality and just in general, help other people, but whilst putting myself first. So, Jean, I wondered, um, would you agree that we must put ourselves first in concentrating on our own healing? Some may say it's our shadow work in order to be able to help others. And anything else that you might want to say from what I just said?
Yeah, so that kind of goes into blessed for services. I started learning this as I got big in the world. I can't do it all myself. So the first idea was, I was answering all the emails and it got into the thousands a day. And there's nobody that can do that except God. So, I said, okay, I need help. So I got blessed for service team. And then in the process of the years go by, I realized I'm drawing my energy so far down that I got to a health crisis that I'm working my way out of. But you got to put yourself first, and you got to take care of your corporeal vessel, your spiritual vessel, your mental vessel, all of that. You got to take care of yourself. So, it's for me, it's not something that I grew up with. I was with, because of my martial arts, my level of stamina, and then my military career, where you do massive hours up. And I was already multiple, even early in my military career, I had multiple black belts. So and I'm, the real hand to hand stuff. So you're really ferociously powerful and healthy and strong and all of that stuff. My workouts on the ship, people were just like, you don't mess around with Gene, it's like, they're just like, oh my word. Because I would do inverted sit ups hanging by my feet, iron cross dips, and the torpedo skids in the torpedo room, push-ups with the torpedo room watch, weighed 300 pounds, sitting on my back because I didn't have enough time to do things. So I shortened it by having weight on my back, all kinds of things like that. So I was used to having a resilience. But as you get into the years we're in, you realize that you draw on that for too long and it'll draw you down. And so it did draw me down until where I had some issues, specifically mostly due to the shedding stuff. And I got Morgellons, and then it got worse and worse and worse till recently I realized I've got to take time for myself. So even on my website, I do live streams Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And I do interviews Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and I save 4 days a week to be with my family, to take care of myself, take care of my health, to get my health back up to where it was, because you can't help others if you wind up draining yourself till you're dead. So, like you said, there are times where it's critical, you need to help somebody, but the rest of the time, you got to take care of the body, of course, first and foremost, and that's literally your church. That's given to you by God. It's an obligation you have to God to take the best care of your body that you can. So always try to eat healthy and drink healthy, distilled water, different things like that. But it's magnified massively in the last few months because I realized the times we're in and the amount of energy I'm pouring out, I can't sustain it forever. So I want to stay here to see all of this end. And I don't want to be like Moses and go, well, there it is. There's the promised land, but I don't go in because I'm done. So I want to see this all come to an end. And it's going to come to an end, if we just hang around for a decade more. So, it's getting that last decade, because I came back for all this, and now I want to see this come to an end, and I want to see the human species get their true freedom and all of this satanic cabal stuff to come to an end, and all of this throughout, starting on Earth and then throughout the galaxy and then the entire universe. Watch the wave go out. I'll leave with the wave as it goes out, and I'll be able to see it at fifth density and beyond. So, it's understanding things at a deep level that, I wasn't raised religious, but from the time I learned to read, I always wanted to know the meaning to why I was here. And I've always been able to remember lifetimes, many, 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 many. I've gone on backpacks. My family was very outdoor oriented. And one of them was, very little, carrying a heavy pack. It was before the Glen Canyon Dam went in. We were hiking up to Druid Arch, and that wasn't water. But you had to keep crossing the river. And my father was upset I was going so slow, so I couldn't take my boots off. I had to walk through the river, and it's mud. It's muddy, so the sand and the dirt of the desert got into my shoes. My feet were bleeding. I was cold. My feet were cold, but I'm hot, and I was miserable. And I just took off up the Round Valley, just a little bit, maybe 50 feet, and went up the side of the mountain into a Anasazi dwelling. And I said, I'm home. And I'm like, then I realized I haven't been living here for hundreds of years. And I could see the little ear of corn that I had been eating when we had to leave in an emergency, and it turned to stone. That was a long time ago. Yeah, this is not my home anymore. This is not my life. So that made me wonder about things. And so the first book I ever read was the I Ching, because growing up in a Bible Belt area of the U.S., and I'd never, I didn't start learning to read until fifth grade, because, like I said, school seemed stupid to me. I just ditch. I just leave. Why go to this thing? So, the first teacher that took me aside and said, your future is your education. Your family life is what you say it is. They're not going to take care of you. You will be the only one. And so you need to learn. She realized I couldn't even read or count above the number 10. And so she was Buddhist. And so, I very quickly learned to read and get a high level of math skills and all kinds of things, all the way up beyond high school. And so, because I was just reading voraciously, I got into reading my dad's publications, Scientific American, and all kinds of stuff. And she said, for sixth grade, she goes, so you're essentially through all the materials I'm allowed to give you. So what you can do this year to get your grade is, because I would just study in her office, because I was so different. I got bullied pretty bad. I was smaller than most people too. And, it also came about is the very first day of school in fifth grade in that school, the teacher was talking about the Bible, and I raised my hand, like, what's the Bible? And this is the Bible Belt school and area, the whole place. And everybody turned and like gasped at me. As soon as the class got done and went to go to my next class, it was like the Dead Sea party. All the kids went up against the lockers and were whispering and pointing at me. And the bullies started assaulting me all the time. And so that kind of turned me off on being a Christian pretty quick. Because, if this is Christian and they beat the bejeebers out of you, I mean, how, that's not what I understood it. But so I'm not really wanting to learn about that. So she asked me in sixth grade, what did I want to read to make book reports on? She goes, pick any book out of the library. I go, I've already read them all. You've read every book in the library, even the Encyclopedia Britannica. Yes. She's like, I'm a voracious reader. She goes, I noticed that, but I didn't realize you're that far. So, okay, I'll bring a book. What would you like? And I go, I want something that explains the meaning of everything. So she, being Buddhist, brought the I Ching. And so that engrossed me for the next 3 years, trying to figure out what the hexagrams meant. I knew it meant the underlying meaning of life, the universe, and everything, but it took me 40 years to figure it all out. Mm-hmm. So I have figured that out, partly because of my death experience, but that does focus it pretty clearly. But then essentially, with along that way, I did realize certain things, that all the religions originally came from one religion because of my ability to remember into the ancient times, and that they were all broken apart to get us to fight each other over the name of God or what God or this God or that God. And a lot of the gods are Satan. So, and I actually had an assault by Satan on my second submarine. I got pinned to the ceiling in berthing, and the messenger of the watch came to wake me up to go on watch, and I was pinned to the ceiling, and books were flying off my bunk, and he saw them, and I said, "Get out," and I went into the crew's mess, and he was terrified, he was shaking, and he goes, "Was that what I thought it was?" I go, "What'd you think it was? The devil?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "I think I'll go find a Bible." I go, "That's probably a good idea." So that does focus when you know Satan exists, and you have a witness that never believed in that stuff. Now they know too. And so you become, not a Christian in the traditional sense, but I started really studying every single thing I could about Christianity, along with all of the other spiritual works I could find, to put it all together into where it came from originally. And then, of course, later on, that was about 1977. I had another assault by him. And when I was very young, well, not very young, but on my 16th birthday, I got assaulted by Asmodeus, because that's the one that goes after the kids. He's the second kind of right-hand man of Satan. And so that's why Satan attacked me, because I repelled Asmodeus, and I learned something very pivotal. All you got to do is say no, because it said, "You're mine." Sucked me inside, and right in front of my friend, we were in downtown, and I'd just seen the movie Fantasia, taking me down to see it for my birthday. We were living together. I'd moved out and living with him on my own. We went into a studio apartment when I was 16. So my 16th birthday, he took me to a movie. Fantasia was my favorite movie. We got done, and but 2 o'clock in the morning at that time in the city, there was nobody but street sweepers and trash pickup and that stuff. So we went to this building. He said, "I know you're really psychic, and this building makes my equipment go crazy." He was a dictaphone repairman. And so as we walked in, my hair, which at that time I was a typical kid growing up in that era, I had my hair down to my shoulders, and it was standing on end. He goes, "What the heck?" I go, "We need to go the other way." That's what I'm getting. He goes, "No, just go into the lobby." And I went into the lobby, and he goes, "Go up on the escalator. It's turned off. Just walk up like a regular stair. Look down on the fountain and tell me what you get." So as soon as I stepped on the escalator, he said I disappeared instantly, and was instantly on the escalator on top of it, laying face down on the other side of that area, that entry area where the fountain is. He goes, "How'd you do that?" And I go, "Don't step on the escalator." "And how do I get down without going back down it?" So he goes, "There's an emergency exit." And so that, what happened for me is I stepped on it. Suddenly it was in like a black magma, like burning hot tornado. And it was saying, "You're mine." And I said, "Nope." Because I grew up with a lot of that kind of abuse. No, nobody owns me. I own me. I am mine. Since I left home, I go, "I'm mine." That's it. I kowtow to nobody. I don't care who you are, what you are. He goes, "Look at all these others I have taken," and I didn't have at that time the idea of, or even the conception of a soul. So I saw these white objects swirling around, and I said, "Well, that's fine for them. They believed you. I don't believe you." So he killed me and put me back together. And I said, "Now, how about now?" I go, "Nope." "What are you going to do? Beat me worse than I've been beat before? I've been beaten to death already before." So he did it a few more times, and I noticed I was gaining energy. Every time he reassembled me, he had to use energy of his own. And so I figured something out. Just keep going. Just go. I don't care how long this takes. Sooner or later, I will have more power than you. Just keep going. And the answer will always be, "Never going to happen." It goes, "Will you give yourself to me?" "Never going to happen." I realize there's some kind of cosmic law here. I have to agree. That's never going to happen. So he kicked me out, and that's how I suddenly reappeared for my friend. But that made me completely change everything. And that's when 16, I started going through the Bible and looking and, praying and all that. But, doing it on my own without going to a church and being indoctrinated into the way the church does things gives you quite a different view. And I started seeing, because of my study of the I Ching and seeing the patterns and being high level in math already at that time, I started seeing in nature that everything had a certain proportion. It was the same proportion. Everything was built on a singular function. And that, being very mathematically minded all my life, I realized, and of course, that was reiterated in 1990. This was, many years earlier, that if you're seeing one structural method for everything you're seeing everywhere, there's one being structuring everything everywhere. That's why the I Ching, that's why everything's built on that same basic formula. You see it in the way your fingers are. You see it in the way branches come off of a tree, in the veins in a leaf, and the way the flowers are built, the way conch shells spiral out, the spirals of the galaxies, the orbits, the different distances of the orbits of the planet, the ratio of the masses of the planet to the mass of the sun. It's all in the same ratio called the golden mean or the phi. And so I said, well, there has to be one creator of everything. And it's certainly not this thing that took me, the later Satan himself, certainly not you either. So I was like, I just want to know. And so I've always been hungry to know the truth and know knowledge. And so I seek and I learned how to literally, I was born backpacking, rock climbing, hiking, and skiing. By the time I was 8, I was skiing alone on black diamond slopes. They weren't called that back then, even off in areas where it's much more challenging because I was kind of boring. And I do backpacks by the time I was 12 by myself with my husky dog I had at that time. And I spent my whole summer out in nature. And I could see that same thing. And I felt in the quietness of nature, I felt the presence of the one being that's created everything. And I got so I could talk back and forth in time. So I could have an inner dialogue because it's within. And, but I didn't understand it at that time, at that young age. It took me a long time to understand my death experience to completely focus it in the understanding of it. But I realized that there is only one God with a triune manifestation. So that's kind of how I got to where I am.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, thank you. There was a lot in there, and a lot I could resonate with there, because I definitely want to see all this come to an end as well, and within my time, because I don't think I've gone through everything that I've gone through to not see that happen. Like yourself, we've been through so much. I've stared, I've been pinned down, I've stared, I've stared them in the eye, etc. Done all that. So yeah, that's thank you for sharing all that. Alrighty. So you spoke about past lives as well, and I've also had experience of those as well, and I find them to be very healing. So, okay, I shall come back to my questions now. I understand that our central nervous system holds within it all traumas. So where child abuse has been experienced, it leaves ingrained patterning that often can lead to this horrific complex PTSD. Bearing in mind that those most in need, of which I know there are millions, simply do not have the resources to pay for the healing help they so desperately need. How do these souls access this healing?
First of all, is to, I went through a lot of child abuse, a lot. I mean, it wasn't sexual. Fortunately for me, my father wasn't homosexual like all the other men in his family, his brothers. And and that was generational because they're all high level Masons, 33rd degree and above, all of them, except for my father. He broke away from all of that, but he was very, very, very brutal to me. And so I had things, and you have things you don't even remember. And I had one triggered lately where somebody said, "You think you know a lot, but you don't know anything." And that I didn't remember being before every beating, I got told that until that person said that to me 3 times in a row. Not in a row, but 3 times during a Zoom session or a live on stream, whatever you call it, session. And so it hit deep, and I was like, why is that bothering me so much? And then I remembered he always said that you think you know a lot, but you don't know anything. You're stupid. And so, I was trying to prove myself to my father, and then I tried to fulfill it for him when I was in 8th and 9th grade. I purposely flunked everything. I got a 0 on every test. And a social studies teacher gave a test that was multiple choice on purpose, that you had to fill out an answer on every question. And so I'm trying to prove to him I'm as stupid as possible. So I missed every single one of 150 questions perfectly. And the teacher had purposely made it to test if I was doing it on purpose, failing everything, missing every single point possible. So I get a 0. And so he made some questions, the right answer and the wrong answer, very close to each other. So you would really have to know the material to get the wrong answer. And I still got the wrong answer. So wound up, I got out, called into the social worker with that teacher, and he said, he's got to be close to a genius, if not a genius, because he missed every single question. And about a third of these questions are rigged. So you got to know this material inside and out to get it wrong. And he got every single question wrong, So, of course, that led to more beatings for me. And so eventually I did left home. But, when I heard that again, that deep scar that I didn't even remember came up. And it's to get over those things, when those come up, I thought it was me. It was all me. There's something wrong with me. And so that's what an abused child does. Or somebody going through something, any kind of trauma-based mind control situation like that. You think it's you. That's how mind control is even done, where the abuser makes the person think they need to fit into the situation. Mm-hmm. And so whether it's a group like, with the Stockholm syndrome, or with the thing with the cults and these things, they'll make the person fit in, and they think if they don't fit in, there's something wrong with them. And so it's learning to forgive yourself, to know that God, through his son, forgave us. And if he can forgive us, we can forgive us. We can forgive ourselves. He will forgive anything as long as you own up to it and you take balance for it and you do your due diligence for it, then you're forgiven. So if God can forgive you, you certainly can forgive yourself. And know that another thing that I realized is that we're made as by a God that's absolutely flawless and infinite. It is everything everywhere. And we're part of that. So you can't be flawed. You may have become flawed through things you've accepted, but you're not made flawed in the very, very beginning of this creation. You're flawless. We were amazing beings way back when, but it's all the things that were done to us, or we've allowed to be done to us, or that we've chosen to do to ourselves. And so once you realize that, you can see how God looks at you, and you can let those things go and get yourself more and more like in the footsteps and in the manner of behavior of the corporeal being that was directly from God, that could walk this plane of existence flawlessly. In other words, Jesus Christ. And so it's a work of time, and it's a work of due diligence, and a work of introspection constantly. But it's a work of understanding the balance and taking care of yourself, like your realization. And I just realized that you got to take care of yourself first. You got to take care of the body God gave you. You've got to take care of your mind. You've got to eat well. You've got to speak well. You've got to do your best by people. And you're going to hit people that are going to just be really mean and nasty to you. And you just got to let it go and say, not my deal. That's your choices. And so I'm letting it go. And it has nothing to do with me. And I'm not going to be involved in that. And you don't know what you're doing. So I forgive you because you have no idea what you're doing. They have no idea the long-term consequences of purposely doing something to hurt another person. The long-term consequences are beyond what most people can comprehend. It can include up to losing your soul. A lot of people, I did a presentation on my Rumble and my website called Luminosity of the Soul to explain it to people. You can dim your soul out. You don't just sell it. You can dim it out to where it's gone. And that means when you die corporeally, you're done. That's it. There's no more you. Because the spirit that you're with, your body isn't, your spirit's not within your body. You're within your spirit. Your physical body and your mental body and your astral body and your causal body are all within your spirit. And that's all being activated by the part of the Holy Spirit that's you, that's within the soul body. So when you die corporeally, the astral and the physical and the mental and all those other bodies except the soul body disintegrate. And if you don't have a soul, the spirit spreads out across creation and there's no more you. And then it just recreated into other things like stardust. Like God, uses it to recreate because you gave up the container. So you dimmed out the container until you could not, come back again. You just kept going and going, and you got warnings, and you got people telling you, and you got all kinds of stuff. You didn't listen. You got sidetracked into your ego, your pride, your arrogance, your lust for power or lust for whatever it is. And, that's why it's so important to understand the laws of God and all that. But it's, during this time of being Gene Decode, this is a huge lesson for me of learning to, when people do things and say things, that may be their truth. It doesn't have to be your truth. And if they're saying you're messed up and you're this and you're doing your best, that doesn't have to be true unless you want to accept what they're saying. They're not God. They are an individual just like you, or maybe not. They could be mnemonic. They could be mind controlled. They could be many different things. They could be mankind and not even human. And that's a realization I had in my research for a long time. When I first woke up, I was dawning on me because in my generation of my family, there's nobody like me. And in my father's generation, only his oldest sister was a kind, loving, and considerate and caring person. And so it dawned, when I woke up, I met a guy at a Dr. Coleman presentation who wrote Committee of 300, and the guy was talking. I went to his boat. He had a small boat he lived on in the harbor there in Hawaii. And I said, it's dawned on me I may not be human. He goes, perhaps you're human and they are not. In other words, I was talking about my family. And I go, maybe you're right. He goes, yeah, it'll come to you. You'll research it. I'll just let you go. And so in reading the Bible, it completely, in Genesis, dawned on me. I was like, we shall create them in our image. We, them, ours. I'm like, what? You got two children, Cain and Adam. Adam. Yeah, my mind's running amok here. But anyway, you have Adam and Eve had two sons. Well, Cain is not the son of Adam. They genetically altered the material. They took, just like we do today, they can clone somebody. They can take an egg that's been impregnated and replace some of the genetics and create something else. They wanted miners to mine gold for them, and the human race had refused. And learning all this ancient history and stuff, I figured it out. And so it's even more evident when Cain is forced to go out, he finds a wife. I'm like, from where? Monkeys? What? No way. And then his sons find wives. I'm like, there's people already out there. It's humans and mankind. We shall create. Mankind are not human. They're two different species, and mankind are oversold, where human are individually sold. So there's 13 oversouls for all of mankind on Earth, and there's like 4 billion mankind on Earth. So they've got about a 307 millionth of a soul. It's a kind of a loan by the oversoul while that personality is extended into life. And so if you had a 307 millionth of something telling you not to hurt another person, and you see money and you see power and you see fame, You're not going to even listen to that little tiny voice a million miles away going, don't do that. Be nice. You won't even hear it. So that, I have no problem forgiving them for they know not what they do because I realize they are either mankind.
Mm.
Essentially, there was a person a long time ago that wrote about the soulless ones. And I've written a thing up about from what that person wrote about the nine, or I think it was eight, it's 8 or 9 ways to know and recognize them. It's what most people are calling narcissists. And you have two types. You have sociopaths and psychopaths. It just depends on how greedy they get, essentially, or how far down they get. But the 9 ways to recognize them, so that they're very good. They're very chameleon-like. They can seem to be human as heck. You might be married to one, and you think for decades they love you, they're this, just like my fiance, I love you, and on and on and over and over and over. Suddenly, I don't even like you. It's for the same reason too. You're very different. What changed? Well, I'm telling the truth though. She goes, I don't care. And they just suddenly flip like a switch went off. And I realized because I'm not the same species they are. I'm a person that cares about other people really and truthfully. I'm not aping it. I'm not mimicking it. I'm not, being a chameleon. It's who I am. And they don't have that. So it'd be like holding a mosquito responsible for draining your blood. It's what it does. It's what they do. Once in a while, like my parents were both mankind, and they crossed and God gave them a singular lifetime to as their own soul, because they changed at the end, because they saw I didn't say anything. I just was myself when I was around them. And, towards the end, death is staring them in the face, and they have an inner knowing that when they die, they're gone. There's no more coming back, because there's nothing to come back to. You don't have your own soul to hold you in. The oversoul will pull you back in, and you're just a personality that it can reassemble for the most part, but not completely, because it disseminates into the oversoul. So if it wants to feed off of another human, because they need to feed off our divine light, they don't have it. That's why when they do introspection, they don't want to do introspection. They don't want to be forced to look within, because there's nothing within. There's no soul, inner light, divine, the Holy Spirit, nothing in there. So it's like, I learned this from a person that I went with a couple and went up hiking, and way up in the mountains. And the lady had done hiking with me many times and loved to go off trail in nature, and like I do, way up and high, and get up and see the mountains hundreds of miles in different states and all of this, and so her husband was tired because they partied the night before, so he wanted to stay and take a nap. I said, yeah, it's a perfect day. It's beautiful. You're going to have this huge lake with nothing but the waves lapping on the shore and the stream running out of it and the waterfall at the other end, just like, the voice of God. I said, it's going to be beautiful. So you'll get a really nice sleep. And there was only like 5 people here, so it'd be pretty quiet. You go over here where it's quiet, and there's kind of a place with the grass is almost like a pillow and everything. So we went up way on this pass, and as we're coming down, I'd seen everybody had left except him. He was, standing on the shoreline. So I went down. I said, "Oh, you're done sleeping?" He goes, "I couldn't sleep at all." Why not? You were alone for half the time that I could see. I was coming down from the pass already. I could see you for half, from up there, you looked like you were alone, and you were. He goes, that's the problem. It was so quiet. I go, yeah, perfect time to sleep. He goes, no, all I can hear is my thoughts. You just focus on the water sounds, like I said. He goes, no, all I can hear is myself thinking. And what's the problem with that? He goes, well, I don't like what I think. Well, then stop thinking it. Think something else. If you don't like your thoughts, choose something else to think about. Think something nice. He goes, I can't do that. And that made me realize they're stuck. They're stuck. That's the oversoul. They're in control of these beings. So they really aren't in control of themselves, even while they're corporeal. And so for them to change at the end, like my father said, my mother, they asked me, what's coming? I said, for you or for me when when you die? And they said, what's the difference? I go, we're not the same species. What? You're my son, or how is that possible? I go, human is recessive, mankind is dominant. And they go, my wife, excuse me, my mother was a nurse, and she understood that. But she said, so is there a way out of this? To change who you are, yes. You've got to become kind and not playing being kind. I mean, really doing it, not because you're afraid of dying, because it's the right thing. You've got to mean it. You fake it until it becomes who you are. Be kind, helpful people, kind to people. When they get upset with you and argue, just say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Just walk away. Just go in your room. And I same thing for my father. I just said, stop being brutal to people. Stop doing these things. You got to do this. You got to do this. And this is. He did really. They both really, really did try. And so they were both at, when they passed, my mother passed, he was dead for a year and a day. She wanted to outlive him by a year and a day because her birth certificate had been forged. And they were divorced. He was her first marriage. She was married to another man for over 35 years. So she said, when she died, she was gifted her own soul because she had done a really good change. When she was at a care facility because she was dying for dementia and Alzheimer's. And as in Chinese medicine, they say towards the end, the candle burns brightest. And I knew because the 2 weeks before, every time I would go there, she would not remember my name. She'd know I'm her son, but she didn't remember I had a sister, let alone her name. Well, suddenly she goes, I came in and she said, oh, she's called me by name. And we went into her room. She goes, how's your sister? What? How's your sister? And she said her name. I'm like, you remember I have a sister and her name? Well, I haven't done that before. Not in years. No. I go, okay, I understand. So I told my sister, you need to get down here if you want to say goodbye because she's got a couple of weeks maybe. And, she came down, but, she's mankind. It didn't. She just came down to kind of make it look like she cares. And, she didn't really do much for her or anything. She just said, I love you, da da. But you look in the eyes when they say that, and there's nothing there. You watch them in a party or something, they'll be, where somebody's having a good time and humor and fun and laughing. There's nothing there. They may be smiling and laughing, but you look into the eye, there's no soul. There's no inner light at all. You'll go, there's nothing there. There's absolutely nothing there. So, that's the 9 signs to notice. The big one is the lack of light. And, you'll pick up on time that there's an emotional vacancy, that they mirror expressions, but it's not genuine. And there's an absence of true empathy. They don't really ever really understand what somebody else is feeling. If you were to ask them, for example, as a non-perfect being, what would you change about yourself? Or what are you currently working on to make yourself a better person? Well, I will stop associating with certain people like this and this and this. Well, that's not changing them. They don't really introspect and see things that they need to change about themselves. That's one way, another way to know. So, there's an inability to engage in genuine self-reflection. They avoid looking inward again because there's just nothing there to see. So, and they don't truly ever learn from experience. And one thing I picked up is, if they give you their word, they won't even remember it. Even if it's life and death, like I had a member in my family said, if you ever need me, I'll be there. I promise you. Well, the first time he needed him about 20 years later, I called up and said, can you help me? I'm in your same city. I need, certain something, this and this. And they said, I can't just come there now. I have guests from Africa. Well, anytime in the next 3 days. No, not going to happen. I can't come every time you need help. I go, what about this anytime I need help? I've never asked till now. Well, you're going to have to help yourself. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the thing of my life. Every time I really needed help, I had to help myself or have a stranger help me. It's like streetcar named Desire. I've become used to the kindness of strangers, And it was a stranger that helped me out of that situation too. But that's how it is. They don't really have empathy. And if they give you their word, they won't even remember it, lady. Because I told the person in my family, but you promised. I never did. Yes, you did. Remember, we were having tea and we were sitting talking. It was about 2 a.m. in the morning. And I made some Earl Bergamot tea, uh, Darjeeling's gray Earl Bergamot. And we were having tea. And you said, if I ever do, no, that never happened. I remember the tea, but I never promised you anything. So it's like, and then later, oftentimes, or often, frequently, they will remember things reversed. Like if you have a situation, what they say is what you said, and what you said is what they said, if it facilitates the situation for them. If you're saying, well, I don't understand this because like this before. Well, that was you. No, that was you. And you can even produce letters, recordings, videos. You made that somehow. It's like you put it right in their face. And I realized you're dealing with somebody that doesn't have the same facilities as a human being. They have none of that. They're just like a shark or a mosquito that feed off of the inner light of human beings. And so a lot of the people that run the world, and this is the type of beings they are, the psychopaths and these things. And so, they go in for power and control and wealth to feel something. If you don't feel kindness, love, and compassion, and you go out in nature and you don't feel, I've gone into places, because of my abilities. There was a place in Puerto Rico I climbed down a waterfall to get to, and then went up a river, and it was like a movie set. It was flawless. There was a huge towering valley, 60-foot walls going up at about 80 degrees with hibiscus flowers, different colors hanging down. And then the river was flowing smooth and green and reflecting in the blue sky above with 3 layers of tropical canopy on top of the big, valley rims. And then in the middle was a tree that was completely covered in moss going across the river. And in the middle of the river on the tree was a purple orchid and a huge waterfall behind it. And I'm like, I was so stunned by the beauty. I was in tears and I couldn't move for about half an hour. I was like, oh, this is one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen. It's mind boggling. You'll take them there and they go, yes, that's beautiful. So what can we go now? And I had another place where it's very similar to that. And I took this one gentleman up there and he couldn't move for 30 minutes either. He was frozen. He goes, I don't want to ever leave. I laughed after an hour. We need to go before we can't go down some of we came up in the dark. He goes, I don't want to ever leave. I think I'm in heaven or something. I go, yeah, this is what God looks like. This is God's church right here. Flawless, perfect, absolutely beyond belief, beautiful. And so, yeah. And they don't feel that. They'll go, okay, that's nice. That's pretty. Take a picture. I'm gone. I got the picture for later. It's not like when you immerse yourself in those places and you can feel the presence of God and the Holy Spirit and Christ right there with you. And so, they don't have that. So for me, it's, more of a sympathy and a compassion like Christ had, forgive them for they know not what they do. And they can't share this. They can't share this. They can't have the excitement for what's happening on earth. All they know is it's going to be Armageddon. No, it's not. That may be where you're going because that's your focus. You go on the timeline that's your focus. And that's just something I've always had too. I've known timeline changes since I was in 7th grade, where I had a massive timeline change and a best friend disappeared and a whole lot of other people disappeared at the same time in that school. And I was like, nobody noticed it but me. And his house was gone that I played with him the day before when I got off the bus. His house was a vacant lot with a tree that had to be 150 years old growing right where the house was. I'm like, I don't understand. So having that different point of view and understanding all of these and learning all of these mysteries makes you really focus and understand it all. I'm really humbled by it all because to see God moving and his hand back in play and moving on Earth, the people ask me who's at the top of the alliance. God. This is the hand of God. You're seeing things happen that could not have happened. There's no way. That's why they're going, how did we lose control? Because God's hand is at play again. Your time is coming to an end. This is the time that Satan was given X amount of time, and his time is running out. And so now God's at play and ending it all. And, he will always use players. So you always have humans and alliance and different beings that are helping angelics and all these to bring the end of the Satanism and the stuff they do to children and all this stuff. But it's to understand the depths of what you're experiencing at a real level. And, it's just knowing that to hold somebody responsible that's done terrible things to you when they're not even able to understand or behave the way you are. They don't have that inner guidance. They don't have that inner light. You're wasting your time. You're giving energy to just try to fix something that can't be fixed. God could fix it if they're willing to, like my parents at the very end. And I don't think it was me completely or even mostly. It's because they were in nature all the time possible. They were backpacking, hiking, rock climbing, backcountry skiing, all kinds of things. They learned such an appreciation. Eventually, the beauty of God's creation got into them, and it made them want to continue and to want to experience that and to see the beauty. And they started seeing beauty outside of nature itself, kind of sort of outside, in the way I was as a good person, trying to do my best and being kind and considerate and compassionate, even when I had been brutalized. So like what happened for my father is, I was having problems every time I drove that my knees would swell and I had to wear shorts even if it was cold. And so I talked to God and I said, what's causing this? Because I know all dis-ease is a lack of ease with your spiritual purpose. So he said, you need to forgive your parents and you need to tell them that you love them and you got to mean it. It can't be just words. So you got to figure out a way to do that. So the first one was with my father because I realized the upbringing he went through, because I found out about our family's heritage going back many generations of brutalization and all this. He went through way worse than I did. And so I went to him. I drove from Arizona up to, 2 states up to where he was just to do it. And I came in there and my knees were swollen for driving for 13 hours straight. I'm wearing shorts. And I sat down with him and his third wife. And I said, I need to talk to you. And he said, yes. And I said, I wanted to tell you that I love you and I forgive you for everything that you put me through. And I realized I had asked for that before I was born. It made me who I am now. I chose you so I would go through that, so it would make me who I need to be for whatever's coming. I wasn't Gene Decode yet. I go, I know I need that strength and I need that. And he goes, no, I should have nurtured you. He was already, he had Parkinson's. He was on his last years. And he said, I should have nurtured you more. He still couldn't come to say, I love you. And I said, no, we're perfect. You gave me an appreciation and an ability to see and be in nature very few people have. I can be out there with almost nothing and survive. You taught me all kinds of things, skiing and rock climbing and backpacking and hiking and orienteering and, all of these things. And, gave me an appreciation of math and science from your career and all of these things. So we're perfect. We're perfect. If you got something to work it out with somebody else. We're good. We're done. And he said, okay. And so thank you. And I walked out and it was like time-lapse photography. I looked down at my knees and they just, within 3 steps, my knees were completely normal. I'm like, it's kind of obvious when you got shorts on. And his third wife goes, I don't buy it. I go, look at my knees. I do. That was real. She goes, why? They look fine. They weren't fine when they walked in. There were 3 times bigger around than that. I had tons of water on the knees. She goes, oh, I didn't notice. And I said, yeah, that's how it looks. And so then later was my mother, you'd think without the brutalization, but it was more of a mental thing with her. So I did the same thing. And she was the same way. She just at that was a point where she goes, how can you forgive me? Same way you can forgive yourself. Forgive yourself and forgive everybody and pitch in around here and do things. That was from her question. I said, I love you. And, I always will, and all of that. And so you're a fine person. And she asked me, she was a drama master, not a drama queen, how do I change? And I said, stop lying. Stop making up stories. You were the first woman ski patrol in the United States. You put yourself through nursing school in the Depression. You were a nurse in World War II. You volunteered. You've done some amazing. You're first person that climbed certain peaks, first woman that ever climbed certain peaks. You're an amazing person. You just tell the truth of who you are. It's impressive as heck. You don't need to make up stories. People will figure it out. I figured it out a long time ago. Most of your students, when you were a college professor, figured it out. That's why you're no longer, you were cut, because they figured out you were making stuff up. And even in history, you were teaching history and you're making things up to make it sound grandiose, and it wasn't what you said. And so just tell the truth. And so she did, and so see that, even they can change, but they have to want it. And so you can want it all you want, and you can do anything you want. It's like they say, you can lead a horse to water. You're not going to make it drink unless it wants to drink. So to sit there and get upset or to do anything about their situation, you're not going to change it unless it's their time to want to change it. And because of the times we're in, it's extremely unlikely. My parents left back in 2012 and 2013. So that's a long before, and they didn't know all this stuff. So knowing all this stuff, and with people that are bad to you or mean or cruel to you that know all this stuff, for them to change, all they see is the Armageddon and this all coming and this is the end of that. Well, that's the case then, because that's their focus. You go where your focus is. I learned that from martial arts. If you focus, you're jumping off of a bank of a river onto a rock 20 feet down that's smooth. You will not hit that rock unless you're focusing utterly on that rock. I did that with my wife. That's how we met, through martial arts. And I had her do that. And she landed in the river. I said, where was your focus? On the fact that you were going to miss and go in the river, or the rock only? She said, the river. I said, get back up here and focus until you can see yourself now on the rock that's now slick, wet, and smooth, landing it perfectly without moving. And so she focused for about 5 minutes and she landed it perfectly. And so you always go where you focus. Now, I even saw that skiing. And when I was going through college, I needed an extra point for my loan. And so I took a ski class, and I grew up skiing. So, it's like, it's effortless, And so the instructor goes, I don't know what you want to learn. I go, there must be something new in the years I was in the military. Yeah, there's bogey turns. Okay, teach me that. What do you want to ski? Powder, the big bowls up there, off outside the ski area. He goes, we could do that. So there was a lady for the first 2 weeks with us. And but the second week, she goes, I hate when he's doing these things. She goes, all I do is fall all the way down. So is that your focus? You're going to fall? Well, yeah, because I always do. Okay, let me show you something. Try this. Envision yourself doing perfect turns, nice, beautiful S turns, all the way down, and just getting all the way down perfectly. No slips, no nothing. Just stand here until you're done, and then go until you've got it visualized in your mind that that's it. And so she did it. And then I forgot to say, and then you get down the bottom, turn around, see your beautiful turns and the track you laid and all that. She got down the bottom to the flat and fell over. So she had to fall. So I realized that's the gift that God gave humanity, is the ability to envision and create reality, that we actually create our reality through what we envision. And so also, you can create your misery and your suffering by holding yourself hostage for your past. and envisioning that to continue and to feeding your energy to others that you're not going to change. So the change has to come within you, just like for them. But you got to let yourself go, forgive yourself, and let everything else go, and forgive them and let it go. And then stop envisioning who you were. If you want to change who you are and you want to change your future, stop envisioning the same things you've always envisioned. Change it. Make it something, like I said to the guy, that he couldn't stand his thoughts. I'm like, well, change them. How do you do that? I go, stop thinking that. That's how. He goes, well, what else would I think about? Your beautiful wife that you just got married to. Think about the marriage. Think about something that gives you joy. Something that's wonderful, that's beautiful. Like you got a brand new car or something. Think about the fun of driving that car. Think about things that give you happiness and joy, and and make you feel good and don't make other people feel bad. This balanced out. And he goes, I don't think I can do that. So because there's not that need. When the need comes, if the need comes, they can break it, but they've got to want it. And so the same thing goes for us, even as humans. You've got to forgive yourself, and you've got to want that change, and you've got to see that change in positive terms only. It's like I learned with Asmodeus. I never said no, because there's no negatives in envisioning. You can't say no more war, because that goes, it's like a child. You put a glass of water or milk and say, don't knock that over. They don't have the negative don't. They have knock that over. So they knock it over. See, aren't you happy? I knocked it over. No, I said not to. Yeah, I did. Not because they don't have the understanding of a negative. The quantum substrate that underlies all of creation doesn't have that. So it's all positive. That's the nature of God, all positive. So when you're envisioning, you say, if you would say, the end of war forever, freedom from war, freedom from slavery, freedom, the end of this. End is a termination. It's a period in time. Never, ever again. So you'd say, the end of war, and wars are a thing of the past. It is something that will never, the occurrence of war in the future is something that's impossible to occur due to the nature of all of the beings that'll be on this planet. So you just envision that, and you do it. It's very hard because you can't use negative terms, but it's something you got to train yourself and think as you're saying it. If you write it down, it's even more powerful anyway. So write it down and go through it and make sure you got it. That's why in the ancient times in Lake Egypt, they would say, as it is written, as it is said, let it be written. So it is done. Because once you write it down, it's been cast in stone in their case. And so it's cast in stone forever. And so now it is a done deal. That's why in the Bible it says that, if you would visualize or imagine something, you've done it. And they actually, in Olympics, they train that way. They will invent something they can't do, like a high jump they can't do. They will envision themselves doing it over and over, and then they can do it. I had a move in martial arts I couldn't do, and my instructor said, just when you get done practicing, imagine yourself doing it. And when you're in a while from now, I'll ask you to do it. And 6 months later, he goes, okay, do it. Do what? What I've been telling you to imagine. You've been doing that, right? Oh, yeah. After you practice on your own, yes. Okay, go do it. And I jumped up and I did it. I'm like, wow. So, it's this learning the powers that we have that we've been told as human beings that we don't have. We don't have that ability, but they've used it. The dark ones have used this. That's why they do the false flags and things they've done. They've used it because if you don't have inner soul, not inner soul, outer soul, the soul's around all your outer bodies. But if you don't have the inner spirit and the soul, you can't do that. You can't create. God made us co-creators. A being has no inner light and no soul, they're no longer able to tap into the throne of God and envision something into beingness. It's like what you saw with Christ, where he's changing water to wine and manifesting bread and all of these things and healing with a touch, like the leper and all these things is healing. It's because he's has those abilities. We do too. That's why he said, I am but a mustard seed to what you can do. So think about that. The Son of God is saying that us humans, we humans, could become more than that, more have more abilities and all this because God created us in his image. Well, God's flawless. Well, therefore we are flawless. We're created in his image. And if you look at the human body, it's pretty darn obvious because you don't only see the five proportion, you see sacred geometry all over the human body. You have three circulatory systems. They make you believe you only have two, but you have three. So you have the chakra acupuncture meridian system, which are literally now the Korean scientists found them with a ultraviolet dye. It conducts ultraviolet light from the pineal gland throughout the entire body. And it's the acupuncture meridians, and they're called Bonghan channels, and they're fiber optics, organic fiber optics that conduct ultraviolet light through the body. So you have three circulatory systems. You have six bodies in your spirit. So you have a seven there. So there's many different things. If you look, you have seven primary chakras, which are just those balls of ultraviolet light conducting like a ball at certain parts in your body. So it's like a little mini server computer coordinating the organs in that area with the organs and the next one and next one, and each one has a different frequency it's at. So the bottom one's red and the orange and then the yellow and the green and so people that say their chakras aren't natural to us, no, God created them. They are natural to us. It's in the sacred geometry of God, seven. So you have 1, 3, 7, 12. You have all of these things within the human body. You see it over and over. You actually have three eyes too, because the pineal, which absorbs the ultraviolet light if it's not calcified through fluoridation, and you stop getting fluoridation in your body, you can decalcify it and you can see ultraviolet light, because ultraviolet light will penetrate your forehead. Your forehead isn't like any other bone in your body. It looks like a honeycomb. If you take a cadaver and shine a light on the bone of the forehead, you'll see like little six-sided shapes like a honeycomb coming through that. So ultraviolet light will pass through the brain tissue easy. And it gets to the pineal, which has rods and cones, things just like rods and cones connected by nerves to the visual cortex of the brain. And that's why in Matthew, it says, I think it's Matthew 6:23, if thine eye be single and open, you will fill with the light. That's the light of the Holy Spirit. And it will flow throughout your entire body. But if thine eye be closed, in other words, calcified, you will be dark. So you will not see the light of the Holy Spirit throughout your entire body, and your health will start going down. And so, sleep disorders and all of these come from that, because you're not getting that diurnal cycle by the pineal being able to pick up when it's daylight and when it's not daylight. And so there's so many things. So you look at the body and you can see that we're created in the same way all of nature is created. You see it over and over, like the five proportion. The DNA spirals in the five proportion. The distance between your tip of your finger and the first digit compared to the second digit of your finger is the five proportion. Or from your tip of your finger to your wrist and tip of your finger to your elbow, five proportion. Or from the tip of your finger to your armpit to your full span of your hands, five proportion. So you see it in animals, you see it in flowers, you see it. So you're created by the one God of all creation in the same blueprint that he uses for everything else. And then anything that doesn't fit into that, if it's going backwards, because also that spiral, the five spiral is clockwise, not counterclockwise. So when you see it counterclockwise, like a really good example is if you take a pencil on a piece of paper and you draw a square, and you have another square cutting the corner of it, and you connect the corners, you have a two-dimensional representation of a three-dimensional cube. Well, if you take a hypercube and draw it on a piece of paper to a four-dimensional cube, you get a swastika, but it's going clockwise. The swastika that the Nazis used is going counterclockwise. That is always the sign of Satanism. Everything's backwards or inside out. So if you look at the solar system we're in, the planet we're on, the galaxy we're in, everything's going counterclockwise. If you look down on the Earth, it's rotating counterclockwise on the North Pole. It's orbiting the sun counterclockwise. Our sun is orbiting the center of the Milky Way counterclockwise. The Milky Way is tilted at 55 degrees. Almost all of the other galaxies are parallel to each other in layers. They call it the egg carton universe because they're in these layers. They're sacred geometry again. It's in a star tetrahedral pattern. And if you see the ley lines of energy that are connecting the stars, they're in spheres. So that's the flower of life.
Mm.
So, it's the same thing. You're seeing mirroring everywhere. It's how God works every single time. But the fallen galaxies are tilted 55 degrees and they're counter rotating. So you're literally being pulled inside out. So it's like you're seeing a reflection of your galaxy on a mirror and it's going backwards because it's been taken by the dark side. And, the solar system is this galaxy is recovering now. We're in that time of the end of the fall and the return to the golden times of direct service to God in Christ.
We are. We are. Thank you. That was very comprehensive, very deep, and I loved it. And again, resonate with so much of that. So much of that. Um, so basically, yeah, we go within and we forgive. And that was another point I had about like loving all, even perpetrators, because how can they heal if we don't, put that out there? So thank you for that. Thank you for that. And I want to go on to this war for our soul, because it's always been about the children. And for me, children are really, really important. Rescuing them from the DUMBs, the adrenochrome organ harvesting, the SRA, etc. Now, I know Dolores Cannon said a long time ago that children are now coming in with newer and different DNA strands. And that's my understanding too, because they just seem so wise. And they're just coming in differently. Now, some parents are awake to what's going on, and others are not so. For example, those that believe that vaccinations are safe. So I want to ask you, how do vaccinations, if at all, affect this new DNA that the children are coming in with?
Yeah, no one ever asked that question of me before. So it depends on if you're mankind or human, first of all.
Yeah.
It also depends on your focus. If you're focused on ego and pride, it's going to turn you mankind. It's going to eat your soul. Literally. That's why you see these people that have these sudden death experiences. They start spinning around counterclockwise, batting at something. Well, they're batting at demonics that are coming to take them because they've been focused on themselves and their pride and them, me, my, like in Nemo, Finding Nemo. Me, mine, that kind of thing. Now, if you're a kind and compassionate person, and you keep working on yourself, it will affect you less. Now, for these new ones coming in, now this started with birth control actually in the 50s. It caused the humans to start having triple helix, not DNA, but TNA, triple helix, not dioxyribose, but trioxyribose mononucleic acid. So that was what were called the indigo children. Because if you look at their auric field in a deep meditational state, focused on the word of God, it looks, instead of like a human, they would look blue. But the new ones look indigo. And so they're very gifted. And, usually in the 50s when they're born, they were, that's another question I had about myself. Why was I almost a 12-month carry? I was supposed to be born 3 months earlier. I was almost born 12 months out. And they brought my mother in to induce labor because they thought something had to be wrong. And I heard them, just keep her there. We got to go get the shot to start labor. I'm like, oh, no, you don't. And the doctor sensed it. He goes, told the nurse, don't leave her. I've got a feeling about this. When he turned to go get the stuff, And she goes, oh no, he's coming, you know. But it was, you know, I would have stayed the full 12 months. It was 11 and a half months. Well, starting in the 70s, they started being preemies, where they were born 7 months but fully developed. Then the next change happened, which is now in the 2000s in this century, where you have pentahelix, 5-stranded, where they have 5 strands. Originally, humans had 64, not on this planet, but originally on this planet, we had 12. And so we're going back to that as the Earth is already at 5D, at 5th density. Humans are on their way back. And again, it's, you know, if you got the clot shot, it's all where you focus. You're going to feed that stuff if you have these negative things. And that's why to let people go and forgive them, because you're feeding it. All the negative feelings and emotions and thoughts, you know, like we just had a meeting with Blessed for Service, and we're focusing on errant thoughts that pop into your mind about people that have hurt you or something like that. You can't be doing that. You got to learn to stop. And it's hard. It's not easy, you know, but it's very important because you feed that stuff. And so you got to be immersing yourself. I try to get out every day, at least in the backyard, walk around barefoot and get myself grounded and look at the sun and look at the beautiful nature. I've been sun gazing for 40, 50 years now. I can look at the sun for an entire day straight at it. And it fixed my eyes and made my eyes better than 2020. I'm 2015 now. And so, and at my age, that's pretty amazing, you know. And then I have, and that includes nearsighted and farsighted. I see better than the average person. And so by about 25%. And then, of course, also I see auric and all that other stuff. And so getting out in nature and getting away from 5G and all that on a regular daily basis, just unplug the thing. That's what we do. We just unplug it when I'm not using it, you know, and just use, if you have to use it where you don't need a high demand, just use your phone as a hotspot. It's not as powerful. And then, you know, other things you can do, you know, periodically to help. There are other, you know, protocols and things that you can do. Eat healthy, you know, organic foods, all of this, no processed foods. I mean, with RFK, it's become pretty obvious, and he's only at the beginning of what's in there. I mean, there's things like crickets and stuff now they're using. You know, we're not supposed to be eating crickets. The problem is are they cooked? And if they're cooked, are they cooked well? They carry tons of parasites. All crickets, you know, in survival situation, you may eat a cricket or a grasshopper, but you got to cook the bejeebers out of them. They carry tons of parasite eggs. And so there's all kinds of problems with the food. So eat organic, eat healthy, spend time with God in nature every day, spend time in quietness, unplug yourself from everything, no headphones, no nothing. And isolate yourself completely from 5G. If you go jogging, just be alone with your thoughts and the beauty of whatever the people, and talk to people and stop. If you're in a restaurant with somebody, don't have your phone with you. Give the person respect to look them in the eyes and talk to them. And I saw a group of like 15 people in a park one day walking my girl, my doggy girl that you see there. And they're all on their phones. I go, what are you doing? We're talking to each other through the chat. I go, you're right across from each other. Talk, look at each other and talk. Oh, we like to do it this way. What? Why? I go, it's just, we just prefer it. I'm just like, mad are you God? I didn't say it. I'm just like, wow, are you God? You know, it's just like, you know, be with other people. When you're out with other people, don't be plugged in. Have your phone in your purse. If you're sitting waiting alone and you need to check something, check it. You know, but other than that, use it for a tool. Don't use it as what you do most of all of your day. You know, if you do need to do it, like I do it a lot of hours a day, have time to get out, take your dog for a walk, or get out in the backyard, or go see, you know, something and be in nature, or go with a friend and just sit there and talk to them face to face, eyes to eyes, no phones, no computers, no nothing. Leave that stuff in the car, leave it and set it aside, and be like we used to be before all this was invented, where you get with the people and you give them respect and dignity to look them in the eye and to share who you are and share with them in a common sharing. And so, and that'll help you learn who are really the people you need to be with too, because spending time with mankind, you can spend time with them, but realize you're not going to get that exchange. Not really. So you can, be a good person and give a model for them to try, if maybe in their later years, to upgrade, but we're running out of time for them because the timelines are now pulling drastically apart very, very quickly. Very, very quickly. A whole lot of people won't be here anymore. They're already a mass exodus. People just don't notice it because the mainstream media doesn't cover it. In China, it's become incredibly obvious because you've got places like Beijing that have hardly any people in them in rush hour. The lady said, we did a thing on News Talk where we're showing this, and this lady is saying, I commute here all the time, and the street was packed. Now there's only 4 or 5 cars because there's a mass exodus. We're in the time of the shift. Those people are leaving. They're leaving to Armageddon, or they're leaving to 5D positive. They're done being here. Or, they're writing this out and they're going to stay at 3D and they want to see it come, and they're already pretty much at 4D or 5D anyway. So we're in that time of the shift. So it's time to, give the due diligence and enjoy this time now and not be immersed in your technologies and other things, and spend time with introspection when you're alone. Introspect and see, the remember the good things in your life and see how to continue such experiences and forgive everything that went before that rubbed you wrong, and forgive yourself in the process, and go through your mind and see what mind control has been poured into your head by the mainstream media, and learn to see things for the truth of it, and learn to look at things, like I would go to India and I would see things like, and the same thing with the footprints with the Brachiosaurus. My father had been going there for decades before I was born. He never even noticed it. I noticed it right away. Same thing when I went to India, where you see Praveen Mohan is one really good to watch. He shows all these temples all over Malaysia and India and Cambodia with these kind of things of extinct animals that are carved into the, like Angkor Wat, for example, in Cambodia, where you've got stuff carved in there that's supposed to have been extinct for millions of years. There's some kind of problem. You have an elephant that has 4 tusks. Well, they used to exist, but they've been extinct for long before that thing is supposed to have been built. So it makes you realize there's things to learn, and this will be coming out in these truths, and we need to be here to help put it together, especially for the young ones, and be here for the young ones and teach them the true values. You're not going to do that if you're locked into your technologies. They've even shown already that children that are left with phones and iPads for babysitters have lower IQs. They have conceptual problems with 3 dimensions. There's all kinds of problems. So, do things, play with them, get them a dog, get them a pet, spend time with your children, raise your children, give them values, treat them kindly with respect, but be strong with them. When they do things wrong, explain it to them and explain that this is the way of the world, that you get out there and you do things out there. It's going to smack you down. You can wind up in prison or dead. And, so you don't really have to brutalize a child. Very rarely do you ever have to strike a child at all. It's like that lady, her daughter grew up with me, and I only struck her 2 times. One time I slapped her on the cheek. The first time I was cooking when we were first dating, and I was steaming broccoli and cutting up broccoli, and she came in and, she reached towards the hot burner. And I said, no, that's hot. And she defiantly looked at me and started reaching. I go, okay, I'll tell you one more time. You're going to get hurt. Don't do that. And she just stuck her hand right on it. And she pulled her hand back because I said, that's hot. It's going to hurt. And she pulled back, hot. I go, yeah, hurts, doesn't it? She went crying to her mom. Her mom came out and go, you let her put her hand on that? Well, she'll know now when I say no, there can be a really good reason. It may hurt you a lot, and that's the way the world is. So, the other time was long after I put the sword in my knee, and she banged into it when it was healing, and I slapped her cheek, and you know, it freaked her out so bad she threw up. I said, "You got to be paying attention to people that are injured. You can't be banging around." And she said, "I'm sorry." But she was a really fine girl, and she grew up as a really strong and wonderful woman. And the other time, she would misbehave really bad. I came home one time and she was breaking every rule of the house there was. Had somebody I'd never seen there, a friend, and the rules were you had to introduce friends. You can't just bring somebody into the house, and all kinds of things. And I said, okay, you leave, go call your mother or your parents or whoever and have them pick you up. I don't know who you are. I've never met you, so you need to go. And you need to go and clean all this mess up you've made here and put your mother's opera gown back in and get her makeup off your face and all this other stuff, and put the cat litter box back where the cat litter box goes, and not burning in a incense stick with a paper towel above it that's going to light the carpet on fire. And then when you've got all that done, I want you to go into your room and think about what you need to fix this, what changes you need to do, and there needs to be some balance in payment here. And what she came up with is way more drastic. I'm grounded for a year. I go, no, you're grounded for a week. It's not a year. Okay, we'll make it a month. Since we'll go in between. So, and that means you come home, you do your homework first, you do this. You don't see friends for that month. You come home, do your work, help around the house, do these things. But there's ways to raise children strong, to be good people without doing hardly any corporeal at all. And because I'm a male and she was a female, I only struck the cheek. I don't believe in striking a cross-sex gender in private areas. I don't think that's appropriate because it can lead to the wrong impression, and it often does. And even the parent may get off in the wrong direction. It can lead into temptation, and you don't want to go there. So it's important to, we're not told how to parent. For me, because of how I grew up, it was obvious because I just do not what my parents did. I just do the opposite, right? And so, all of these things are, this time we're in is a very special time. This will never, ever come again. All times are that way, but this one above all of them is a time that we will never see. We're seeing the end of the darkness, the evil that's in this starting on Earth, and it'll go throughout the entire galaxy, the solar system, the galaxy, and the universe. We're seeing it all coming down. This is the end of all of the fallen angelics and their control all over the place, and all the beings that are with them, and all that other stuff. They've been given their time to see if they could, Satan said he could do it better than God. And his idea is homoborgenesis, human 3.0. Well, that's coming to an end. So we only have to deal with this for a very short time, and the planets are separating, the Earths are separating, the 3D negative and 3D 45 positive are separating. The separation is already well underway since the bombing of Fardo in Iran by Trump. That created a shattering of a black, evil heart of a planet that fell here, one of two. The other one was shattered in the Alaska earthquake in 1964. That was actually the cabal that caused that earthquake, and it wound up shattering the other one. And that's where the lower level of the cabal, the Khazarians, are actually from a solar system called Scion, and they destroyed their homeworlds of Ariana and Na, or the Arista Na, they call themselves, which later changed its way it was pronounced through time, and the Arista became the Aryan, and the Na became the Nazis. So that's who they are. They're what are now known as the name changers, but they actually originally came from another solar system and landed in the Ponic Steppes in Ukraine. And so, their whole thing is to get world domination and all of this stuff. And they were close. I thought they were, so close it couldn't be done. But now we are even seeing a possibility of the end of the Ukrainian war. And even if it isn't, that means there's going to be a different ending. And it's not going to be very long because Russia, people don't understand why the cabal hates Russia so bad. The Russians helped set up the United States. They help us win the Revolutionary War. They helped the North win the Civil War. They, when Putin, when they got rid of the Soviet Union and Putin got in, he rebuilt churches and synagogues and things all over Russia of all the different faiths. And they have outlawed Satanism. They've outlawed GMO. They're 80% clean. They are saving the world. Ukraine is the home of evil on earth. There in Israel. There are the two places, the Aristana, the Zionists, the Sionists, are home quartered. Well, it's coming down. It doesn't look like it for the Middle East, but the Ukraine is pretty obvious. They're losing ground every single day across the entire front line. If this peace deal takes very long, it'll be done anyway. Because once they get to the Dnieper, it's a smooth shot all the way to Kiev if they so please. And so when you're saying they're wanting to de-Nazi it, well, what is the Nazis? What are they? They're Satanists. That's what they are. That salute, you see, the Sieg Heil, that goes back to ancient times in Atlantis. And even before that, that is Hail Satan. That is what that actually is. You're tearing your heart out and throwing it to Satan. That's what that is. You go to your heart and you throw it out over your shoulder. That's what it is. You're sacrificing your heart. In other words, your soul. It's symbolic. You're giving your soul to the Dark Lord. That's what that means. People don't know what it means. Go to Ukraine, if you don't believe me, and watch a football game. Like in the UK, you watch a game and they'll do the wave, or the US will do the wave around the auditorium or the rink or whatever. They will do the Sieg Heil in Ukraine. They have been raised into that ideology of banderism since World War II. That's, you have to essentially separate that out. And it's, for the most part, separating itself out because they have lost over 1.7 million people. They have lost most of everybody from 16 to 60 that is male, and a lot of females too. So there's not a lot of Ukrainians left, except for those that left in the beginning that were wealthy enough to get out of there when it started. So that's, that was actually built up to destroy Russia by the CIA. And the point is to bring down the seat of Christianity on earth. And it is not the United States, and it certainly is not the UK, the home of the power of the economics, the city of London. And it's certainly not the Vatican, the home of Satanism on earth. The Roman Catholic Church, even the past Pope, had announced that Satan is Christ, essentially, at an Easter presentation. So that's not where it is. It's in Russia. That's why, they have 600 churches rebuilt by Putin. The Orthodox Church. You saw him when he went to Alaska. Every single grave of the pilots that died in World War II, he kneeled down and he did the Orthodox cross. Every single one. What president, other than maybe Trump, would do something like that? What president have we ever seen in our lifetimes? If you're in your 80s, 100 years old, have you seen a president ever do something like that? Or what leader in any country have you seen do that? That's the world we've been in, and that's coming to an end. You can see it coming. And so Trump and Putin and actually Xi all have the red folders. And what's in the red folder? Well, what is red? Blood. It's the blood of the innocents and who's done it. And they've got it all on all of them. And they're using it to make them either go along or be gone. They either go along and make this change happen or they're gone. and they're gone right away. And that's done for the most part. You see about 80% of the leaders you see that were the evil ones are body doubles or clones. They're no longer the originals. I mean, somebody doesn't grow in their 50s and 60s 6 inches in a matter of minutes, like Hillary did. She comes out, she goes back, she's 6 inches taller. I'm like, that isn't her anymore. That's the body double or something. Pretty obvious. And Biden was the same way. So we're seeing the changing of the guard and the end of all of this. It's a miraculous time to pay attention and to really enjoy the things you love and to really pay attention and to focus on it and to think about it and to thank God for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then that gives the children, that gives our new children chance
Yep.
to just be, to be free and just
Yep.
be. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. And on the 19,000 children that Russia has from Ukraine, they saved them. They saved the children, begged them to take them to Russia. And they're living in beautiful lives. Their parents were dead and they're in a war zone. Or they were being trafficked, or they were being harvested for what, that the stuff they take to keep themselves looking young. And they rescued them. That's what really is happening. They're in Russia, yes. 19,000, yes. But Russians rescued them. They rescued them from literally being harvested, being killed, or in a war zone with no parents left. And they're Russians. They're Russian-speaking children. They're not Ukrainians. They don't speak Ukrainian as their first language. The majority, that's the Donbass, Luhansk, all of that. Well, that's Russian. Has always been Russian until Stalin came along and drew new lines. This is Ukraine. Just made it up. Kind of like Israel. Made it up. This is Israel. And they're saying, well, it includes the Gaza, it includes this, it includes that. Well, if you want to go to Greater Israel, what they want half of Africa in there and parts of Turkey. It is huge. And so, this is, people need to understand and study the history and also look at what you're looking at. Look at the arm badges they have on the IDF and look at what's really going on in Ukraine and look at the human trafficking. And this is coming to an end. Same thing in Gaza. Same thing's being done by the same people. Those people, Netanyahu, that's not his name. They made up names that sound Israeli, sound Hebrew. They're not. They're the name changers. It's not anti-Semitic. They made that up too, by the way. It has nothing to do with it. It's anti-satanic. That's what I am. So we're coming to the end of all that, and it's an amazing time. And so the best thing for me is to know, as I do, with 80% of the dumps cleaned out and either blown away or millions of children rescued. Millions. It's a beautiful time. And that's coming to an end. It's like Putin said, the vampire ball is coming to an end for the Western world. And I say thank God and hallelujah. And thank you, Russia, and thank you, Putin. Because that's what's coming to an end. And it's being done through the Ukraine. They have deindustrialized Europe, and they've demilitarized the entire Western world. The US, the UK, all of Europe, all of NATO, all of the EU. They don't have any more stuff. We're going to send a Patriot missile system where we can scrape it up. As soon as it gets there, it gets blown up. It's like, yeah, that's a good thing. That's a good thing because it means now that all this is coming to an end and it's no more forever wars. That's Satan's way. So that's my spiel. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, freedom from war, freedom from hate, freedom from lies. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our children are the children of the future, aren't they? And they just must be protected at all times. And I understand that a lot of people just can't wrap their head around all this. They just like you say, they either want to shut off or they just think that you're like, yeah, I'm like a black sheep of the family or whatever. However, I'm not really. But I always felt that I was, but I know that there are more in my family who are on my wavelength. Um, however,
Well,
it seems to
you're
have just
probably in a family that's mankind and you're the only human. That's
it,
it. It's just
yeah.
simple.
Yeah, I don't think I'm the only human in my family because I know there's
And
definitely.
you're blessed. I am.
Well,
I,
I'll be the last that probably the last yeah. But I know that there's another.
well, there
So
was my aunt in mine, but she died about 20 years ago at 103. And it
oh,
was fascinating too, because about 3 years before she knew it was coming, humans knew. And she goes, "Can I ask you a question?" I go, "Sure, anything." She goes, "I realized something about you. You're not from here, are you?" I go, "You mean Earth?" "No, not originally." She goes, I go, "What made this dawn on you?" She goes, "You were strange as a child, and I thought you grew out of it. You grew into it massively. You're the strangest person I've ever known. It's wonderful how you are, but there's nobody like you." I go, "Same for you, you know. Have you noticed that?" She
mm,
goes, "No, I didn't." I go, "Look at around you at everybody else in your age group in the family as you were growing up. Anybody like you at all? At all?" "No, now that you mention it, no." I go, "Yeah, it's pretty much the way it is." She goes, "So are you going to leave before me?" "No, no, I got some things I got to do here. I'll be a while after you're gone. I'll join you later." She goes, "Oh, I'm good. I'm glad. As strange as you are, of all the people in the family, I always enjoy your visits the most. I always." And she was an amazing woman, and she was very, very open minded and stuff. And when she said, she asked me where I'm from and all kinds of things, and when did I come here? And I go, well, about 260 million years ago. She's like, "Oh, what made you come here?" The terrible stuff that Sarah didn't want it to happen, the same as it happened on my home world, where it almost took us down. So I thought I'd help here. I thought I'd help humans. "How's it going?" "Not so great." But I still have hope. I still have hope, and I know there's God out there. So I know it's going to change. I can see some changes. It was cracks of light at that time, but now it's like the whole walls, the whole dike is shattering. It's not like they're trying to plug holes. The dam is just collapsing around them, and they're like, ah, So it's just yeah, I would have loved to. I know she's knowing what's going on here, but I'd have loved to have her here to share it with her. She was an amazing lady. So anyway, you'll often find, for those of you that are this resonates with, think about it that way, and just don't worry about them. That's just their nature, and they will change if they decide they absolutely must. And that's the only way. You can't make it happen. You can pray for them, you can forgive them, and you need to do that for yourself most of all. And that includes, like Dolores Cannon said, tell your body how much you love it. Tell your legs and your heart and all the things. If you have a problem somewhere, tell it you love it, and it can get over it, and you can heal, and you can do all these amazing things. And I know, because I love you, and you're amazing, and you're created perfectly, and so I know you can do this. And so, be kind to yourself and love yourself as God loves you. If God can love us, we certainly should be able to do it for ourselves.
yeah. Yeah, so true. Well, that's beautiful. Well, I did have a few more things, but I feel that that would be a beautiful place for us to finish for today on that loving, positive space. That's the space that I come from when I work with people as well. Try and keep everybody in the loving, positive, and see where we're at. That's not to deny that there is negative, the polarities, etc. But yeah, so thank you so much. Now. I've really, really enjoyed that.